I want to create conversation. The most effective form of activism is knowledge and honesty. But it's too late for coffee, so we're just going to have a conversation. But for all intents and purposes, conversations and coffee with Terrence. My good friend here is pretty much one of the best people I know at just having honest conversations with people, with anybody, absolutely without judgment, no matter what it is, without hostility. So, and I think that's the general goal of what we should all be striving for, because there's no way that things are going to change if we can't honestly have conversations with people. Mm-hmm. Why is your passion conversations?
I think that conversation creates an opportunity for transformation. I didn't mean for that to rhyme. But whenever you have a conversation with someone, whether it's someone who shares a common ground with you or with a different view, mm-hmm. like certain seeds are planted, if you're open to it. And those can be seeds of transformation, or they could be a seed that would make you want to stop the conversation.
Some of my most life-altering, I guess, perceptions, if you will, have come from subtle conversations with people and that they don't even realize that they were changing my life. I think my positivity and my positive outlook on life and my, just go-getter attitude that I have now comes from just only as far back as maybe like 2005. Everything sucked, and I was having some email correspondence with a girl that I wanted to mentor me in the acting world. And I was emailing back and forth, and when you're in a rough place, that's all you talk about. You don't have anything to talk about but like whatever rough place you're in. And so a few emails in, she goes, "I'm so sorry to hear that you're always having such a tough time." Those words, "always having a rough time," I was like, whoa, I'm that girl. I'm the complainer. And automatically I felt this shift that, I was like, wow, nobody wants to be around an unpleasant person. And not saying that you shouldn't be able to talk about your problems, that's not it. But the fact that moment I realized that I was becoming a complainer. And I never again. I never want to be that ever again.
The word that you just said, though, I'm just like, when you just said shift.
The shift.
Yes.
Yeah, the shift.
Because that's basically it. Like, words have power. Mm-hmm. And, conversation is a transfer of energy. You're transferring energy through words to each other. Yeah. But it's like the power in words have the possibility of creating a shift in your perception. That's a great power that we share casually. You know what I mean? But we can change each other's lives by changing each other's perceptions. Right. That's so powerful. I love it.
What resonates with you and when it comes to activism?
Gandhi's quote, "Be the change that you want to see in the world." You have to take care of yourself and sort of curate your own experience before you can do anything in the world. Yeah. I was going to say dancing, was going to be my greatest form of activism, but really it's art to me. Because art is another example of what can create a shift in how people see themselves, how we see ourselves.
Yeah, the intention and art is, again, art is no matter what, whether it's music or visual art, like the beautiful pieces on my wall, they create conversations. Yeah. So that's really it. Like, really, all activism is for us to create conversations. Okay. What were we talking about? Activism, art. Oh, okay. Conversations with art. About art and how it creates conversation. Anyway, famous art, famous photographs, famous music, things that mark decades, mark generations, and you can go back to that always. And some of that stuff was so telling of what was to come in the future too. Think about the book 1984 and Fahrenheit 451 and all these books that were basically warning us of what the government can become if we just sit back and do nothing and let them keep us in fear.
Mm-hmm.
You know? Scary, but, you know, that's art. That is activism.
But it's interesting how the author was able to tap into that. You see, that was sort of the sort of paranoia that creates that world.
Yeah.
Existed then,
Mm-hmm.
you know, but it just has like the paranoia has evolved.
Yeah.
You know, people haven't, but the paranoia has.
There's this common misconception that without fear, there's no respect.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and if there's no respect, you can't govern. Because, I mean, I wish that it was a relationship with our government rather than a power struggle.
Right.
Keeping us in some kind of fear to keep their agenda going.
So it's like right now, everybody is really into stereotyping. Like, stereotyping is just cool now. But all those little pieces of racism, you know, are still, that's like regressing us. So I feel like if people just, the more every person awakens and opens up their mind and their consciousness, that changes that creates the possibility of change for everybody, you know? And the situations that happen that remind us of things that we've seen, like, you know, Trayvon Martin, people were comparing it to Emmett Till.
Yeah.
And it's like there's a whole, that span of time in between Emmett Till and Trayvon Martin, well, where people may have pretended like they didn't have those issues anymore, but they did, you know? And they just maybe glossed over it.
With this whole Trayvon Martin situation, Geraldo made a pretty crappy statement about basically his hoodie being to blame for him being murdered, which is ridiculous. So what happened is Russell Simmons, who's a good longtime friend of his, basically wrote an open letter to him.
Comment was more than likely a publicity stunt.
Oh, yeah.
Because, I mean, nobody was talking about Geraldo Rivera. And, you know, he got on there.
Not since the early...
He'll have some books coming out soon, I'm sure. So, I mean, I think that's what Geraldo's trying to do, is make himself relevant again. And he succeeded for a moment, but I don't think anybody's going to be talking about that for much longer.
No, I think Russell Simmons pretty much shut it down. I think he shut it down. Because I think what he said was very, you know, it was pretty well received, and there was nothing to be said after that. You know what I mean? After somebody really, like somebody with integrity says something to you, there's nothing to be said. Especially if they're not offending you. Because he didn't offend him. He didn't offend Geraldo. If you are a smart and balanced human being, you will take that letter and you will say, you know what, I was wrong. Much respect. If that is what you do, if you say, all right, I was wrong, let me revisit my thoughts about it. There's nothing wrong with that. It's so important to lovingly show someone they were wrong rather than making them feel shameful. Because the moment you throw shame at someone, they're gonna run.
There's a really good video about that on one of the TED Talks.
I love TED Talks.
I think her name is Brene Brown. She talks about the difference between shame and guilt. And her research led her to the revelation that vulnerability was the cure for shame. And that you just allow yourself to fumble, to fall in front of other people. It liberates them, and it liberates yourself if you do it without that guilt. You know what I mean? But you don't have to define yourself by those mistakes.
Yeah.
Although we're often told to. Or other people try to define us by our mistakes. We don't have to see ourselves that way.
I think that about sums it up. It's pretty much, I'll see what I want to talk about with you. Glad we fleshed that out and processed it.
Like, put on a really great song and dance to it. That's what I have to say. And dance like there's nobody around. That's all I have to say.
Even if people are around. I do that at work.